Band's starting to pep up now. The Antique Wireless Association sponsors contests over several times in the year. Some of them are CW and some of them are AM contests. One interesting one occurs in January. It's called the Linc Cundall Old Time CW Contest. And this is all about using gear that was designed before 1950, or homebrew gear that's designs that are earlier than 1950. A lot of fun in this contest, and a lot of people really enjoy using the old gear. Some of these transmitters are a ball to get on the air, either with their simple VFOs or with crystal control. And people like to use very simple old-time super heterodyne receivers, and you know, the Echophones, the Sky Buddies, the S38s, and so on. And it's a lot of fun to use this gear. You know, there's a lot of classic receivers from the 1930s and 1940s, and too many to really go over here, but these things are a ball to haul out of the closet, get them running and picking up signals on the air. What about all that World War II surplus you might have? Getting out your Arc 5 and your ARB and your different types of aircraft and ground equipment used in World War II. The classic BC-348 is a lot of fun to use, and BC-779, the Super Pros, and so on. How about a wireless Set 19 or even the TCS? Making your own station is also popular. Some of it's actually period equipment that's been restored, vintage, and other is reproduction equipment. But you try to find as many old-time parts as you can, put together a fun circuit, and get on the air with your old gear. Some of this stuff sounds a little bit chirpy, and it's a little bit primitive to try to use a regenerative receiver on the air, and a slapboard transmitter like a 6L6 might crack a crystal or two, but you're going to have a lot of fun using this equipment on the air. Try the Linc Cundall Old Time CW Contest. People like to use equipment that's from the era where you're using crystal control, or some of the classic super heterodyne receivers of the late 30s and early 40s, military surplus from World War II, and so on. I'm going to be using a crystal controlled transmitter with a 6AG7 and a 6L6, crystal controlled, and two regenerative receivers. The one on the right that's black is a 1929 style regen with two triodes, and the one on the left is more like late 40s type vintage. Got a 6SJ7 pentode in a classic Hartley oscillator regenerative stage with a 6J5 triode output. So some old-time regens, the 40 meter to the left, the 80 meter to the right, and we'll see if we can make some contacts. So the 1929 style regen using two triodes gives a pretty good 80 meter performance. You know, it's a transformer coupled thing, directly heated triodes. So you have to be careful with hum if you're heating them with AC. That's why we have the hum nulling pot. We're using an interstage and an output transformer. And we're putting bias on the audio stage. Let's look a little bit at the capacitor that's used as the throttle. This is your regeneration control, a throttle capacitor. Gives nice smooth regen. The lift link, this is the input coupling. And the main tuning, which is really a band spread tuning, and the band set capacitor. This is kind of the rough tuning. And then down below we have the volume control that's on the output stage. So that's the 1929 regen. Okay, so we're on 80 meters CW. It's a Saturday morning. The regen's at the bottom of the band. So that's around 3.5 megahertz. Now I am using the utility amp, which is an AC-DC amplifier, so there's a little bit of hum in it. And I'm being careful, I'm using an isolation transformer. But of course when you break with ground, you're still susceptible to hum. You still have to establish a ground on the other side of the isolation transformer. Now, if we increase our coupling, okay? You hear how the background noise comes up? Now we're a lot more sensitive because we're coupling closer. But we could be overloading the receiver. Let's back off. Now, let's go 10 years in the future to the regen of the 40s, late 30s, early 40s. By now we have pentode tubes such as the 6SJ7, 6SK7, and these metal tubes, of course, are self-shielded. We're using a metal chassis. And because of that, we're able to get good performance on the 40 meter band and even the 20 meter band using a regen. This is, of course, the age of the super heterodyne, so using a regen becomes kind of a cute thing even in this era. But I just want to show you that by using some shielding and some better techniques, being able to control the regeneration in the screen of the detector tube, which is now a pentode, we can get good performance even on 40 meters. So let's go to 40 meters. So now we're going to try 40 meters, and we have to change the transmitter's output coil from the 80 meter coil to a 40 meter coil. And we also have to switch the driver's tank from 80 to 40. And then we have to use a crystal that'll put us somewhere where we think the AWA guys are going to operate. I've got a 7110 megahertz, 7.11 megahertz. That puts us right here in the band. I've got the little AC-DC amplifier, which is one of those 12AV 650C5 35W4, kind of an all-American 5 type amplifier hooked in, and it is isolated. It still hums a little bit though. The 40 meter is a pentode that's operated as a Hartley type regenerative stage into a single 6J5 triode for the headphones. And I have 3 taps. I have kind of an 8 ohm tap for a speaker, I have a 600 ohm tap, and I have a 2000 ohm tap. I'm using the 2000 ohm tap into the input of the amplifier to give the most output. So I've got 2 volume controls, the volume control on the regen and the volume control on the little amplifier. We kind of balance those out so that we're not distorting. The band is beginning to wake up. It's not completely in yet, but it's almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The band is starting to come alive. So that's around where our crystal is, around 7.1. So we could do a CQ. Here's the regen. And here's the coupling control. When the band becomes very strong in the late afternoon, you back off on the coupling to give you some more selectivity, and just like an RF gain control. It is waking up. Now, of course, a regenerative receiver is not going to give you a clean note when you key, so you can't really use it as a side tone. However, it will overload the regen and make a raucous note, which I think you can use as a side tone. As you can see, we're putting out a little over 20 watts. Nice signal from W2AO. It must have been too much interference for him to hear me. It's funny, the regen's hearing him, but he's not able to hear me. So I didn't actually go through the transmitter very closely in this video on the Linc Cundall Memorial Contest, but I did want to let you know that this is a very popular setup, and you see this lineup of the 6AG7 with the 6L6 final, either in glass or in metal tubes. Basically, we have a small transformer. This transformer is so small you really can't run much more than 35 or 40 watts input with this transmitter. A type 80 rectifier that could also be replaced with solid state diodes, but for the contest we use circuits and parts that are before 1950. A VR150 voltage regulator. Not a very good design having it so close to the tank coil. There is some interaction, but it doesn't seem to hurt the regulation. 80-40 meter switch, the driver coil to allow you to get drive on 40 or 80. This is a coal pits type oscillator. The Pierce oscillator is also very popular, either in pentode or in triode form, driving the 6L6. Just for handiness, I put two crystal sockets in, one to take the small FT243s, and one to take the old-fashioned BC610 style crystals. A single tank adjust on the output, some terminals where I can put a meter if I need to. I've got plug-in coils in the final. This is a cold tank. It is coupled through a radio frequency choke and a capacitor. The 80 meter coil and a 40 meter, basically a commercial coil that I got my hands on. It could just as well have been a coil like this for 40 meters. This will also triple up to 15 meters or double up to 20 meters. I don't usually use it up there. And this is just the power supply choke here. So a very standard type transmitter. Puts out, you know, a little over 20 watts.